In one of the most surprising battles in the group stage, LEC superstars Rogue face on top Esports. I think that this game was a great case of teams having utmost confidence in their drafting philosophies, and this game really came down to which team was better able to pick the appropriate team composition style to the occasion, as well as being able to execute upon it. As always, if you enjoy this content, we'll love a sub for more content like this. Let's hop into the draft. In this game, Rogue start on blue side and ban out Sylas, Draven, and Aatrox. On the other hand, TES ban out Caitlyn, Yuumi, and Lucian. Notable things here are the Lucian ban, which has been something Rogue are not afraid to opt for under any situation, and the Draven, which is also a bit of a tech pick for JackeyLove in this case. Out of the bans, notable priority picks that are available here are Maokai, Sejuani, and Azir, which are all picks that are essentially going to establish a slower team fighting style in the game, so both teams should be drafting with that sort of fighting style in mind. Rogue open up their B1 with the Maokai, which for a team like Rogue is most likely going top, but is also a very good flex across both top and jungle for them. TES respond with the Azir Trundle R1, R2, which immediately establishes that front-to-back style for TES that I was talking about. Honestly, although these are strong picks, I find that top esports tend to thrive better in metas where there is a ton of action and chaos for them to capitalize on. Right now, I'd say we're in a very slow and controlled environment of play, so I think there's fewer opportunities for a team like them to flex their muscles a bit. For the B2-B3, Rogue take Kalista, who is, along with Aphelios, one of the closest ADCs to being best in slot in this current drafting environment, as well as a Victor, which is the main control mage option that also has an okay matchup into Azir. Not many players opt for the Victor into Azir matchup anymore because the nature of the matchup naturally exposes Victor to more dangerous wave states and it's harder for him to play around. To round out R3, TES swing for the Gnar pick as their quote-unquote blind top pick, and we move on to phase 2. The reason I phrase it like this is because Rogue will continue to have the option of putting Maokai wherever they want until they commit all their picks on the B4-B5, so TES have to play their cards around this for now. Both teams do want to play the same way directionally, so bans in the second phase of draft are going to be more focused on the individual champions that each team has and locking out specific combos that can be proved to be beneficial. Rogue choke out some of the best ADCs to pick in the R4 slot here in the Aphelios and Tristana, while TES ban out Jarvan and Renata, which are good additions to Rogue's overall teamfight capability. Out of the bans, top esports take Varus, which is one of the remaining ADCs available in the Worlds pool, considering that 5 other AD carries are banned actually, and Rogue took a 6th one. I would have liked to see more creativity come out from TES here, as I think there could have been some other hypercarry AD carries that can match into Rogue's comp, and I think Varus is severely overrated in the meta, but I digress. Rogue all in by snagging Lee Sin and blinding Rakan. Picking Lee Sin is fine here because it creates openings for Rogue to start fights by getting picks onto the newly revealed Varus, and the Rakan pick is also an interesting one. Ironically, I don't really think Rogue picked Rakan because it was actually good to pick here. He's actually got relatively poor synergies with Kalista, all things considered, and he can sort of cannibalize her identity because he can have a lot of losing matchups as well. The reason I think Rogue picked it in this slot is because they just needed a blind, and there's a lot of support champions right now that are bad at blind. You could say normal CC champions like Nautilus or Leona can fit the bill here, but they honestly feel pretty bad to play it in this meta. The mindset with this is that Rakan is somewhat of a toned down version of these champions that plays better into how most of these front-to-back teamfight mosh pit comps want to play. He's got worse matchups, but his teamfight execution is easier and more consistent, and he scales incredibly well. So it doesn't force teams to commit to an overly aggressive style compared to how champions like Leo or not might. And an interesting adaptation for sure, but one that I'm a fan of. For the R5, top esports swing for the Leona themselves, and we've got ourselves a draft. Functionally, both comps are looking for very similar things, and what's going to define who wins out in this draft will be the differences in the matchups and execution of fights. Top esports also have slightly favorable matchups across the board in the early game, but in exchange I'd argue they have weaker scaling. I think we've hit a point where both of these teams pretty much have a good understanding of what defines this World's meta, and because of this, I don't actually think that one draft is necessarily that much better than the other in this case, but rather than each of them have different strengths and weaknesses to play around. If we're talking about the champions themselves, I'd honestly rate this draft pretty much at a 50-50, but keeping in mind the teams that are piloting each of these compositions as well, I'd say that Rogue have a better suited playstyle for what this meta is calling for, so I'll give them the very slight edge on this one. As always though, hopefully this draft analysis was insightful to you guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay fresh.